When we talk about knowledge today, there is this, well, this almost invisible, overwhelming expectation of accumulation. It's like digital hoarding.
Oh, absolutely. Digital hoarding is the perfect way to put it.
Right, because you wake up, you scroll your feed, you bookmark like 10 different articles that you swear you're going to read later.
Which you never do.
Never do. And you consume endless streams of data points, and the modern world kind of points at you and says, look at that, you are an informed person.
Yeah, but it feels incredibly heavy.
It does. It feels like wearing a backpack filled with rocks, and every single day you're expected to just add a few more.
It's entirely additive, yeah. I mean, we've been conditioned to view knowledge as something quantifiable.
Like data on a hard drive.
Exactly, something to be downloaded, categorized, stored in our brains as if we're just, biological hard drives. And the tragedy of that framework is just the sheer exhaustion it produces.
Yeah, that constant underlying anxiety.
Right, that you just don't know enough, that
Yeah.
you're falling behind the cultural conversation.
But then, if you step away from the glowing screens and you look back at the intellectual landscape of ancient Athens, suddenly that whole acquisition machine just shatters.
It completely falls apart.
It does. You find yourself in this space that is liberatingly empty, a space defined by epistemic minimalism. And that is exactly where we're taking you today.
It's the perfect antidote to the modern condition, really.
It really is. So, welcome everyone. If you're joining us today, I want you to treat this deep dive as a mental spa day for your intellect.
I love that. A mental spa day.
Yeah, we are going to intentionally slow down, step off that relentless modern treadmill of information, and just breathe. And for those of you tuning in from the Decoding the Dark community, which is, a community built on exploring the profound and the unknown, we are so thrilled to have you alongside us.
We really are.
And if you value this kind of deep, reflective exploration, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It honestly allows us to keep carving out these quiet spaces on the internet. Because today, our mission is uniquely soothing.
We are uncovering how a philosopher who lived, 2.5 millennia ago, can actively heal our overloaded minds.
We are, of course, talking about Socrates.
But we aren't approaching him today as some, dusty marble bust in a museum.
Right. No boring textbook lectures here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sources we've pulled together frame his philosophy as a deeply calming living practice. We've got the foundational ancient texts, so Plato's Apology, Phaedo, Meno, and Xenophon's Memorabilia.
The classics.
The classics, yeah. But we are actively reading them alongside modern psychological manuals on cognitive behavioral therapy, academic philosophical encyclopedias, and even vibrant contemporary discussions from Reddit communities like our Stoicism and Ancient Greek.
And the unifying thread through all of this, the absolute hook that makes a 2,500-year-old thinker so desperately relevant right now, is this concept of surrender.
Yes.
The idea that by actively admitting we know nothing, we ironically free ourselves from the exhausting, crushing pressure to know everything.
Which is such a relief.
It's a huge relief. But to truly apply this Socratic wisdom to our own daily anxieties, we really have to understand the environment that forged him, right?
Oh, for sure. To set the scene, you have to remember that Socrates is coming of age right at the peak of the Athenian Golden Age, so roughly between 469 and 399 BCE.
Right.
He is watching his city build the Parthenon, develop radical democracy, and then ultimately he watches the Peloponnesian War just rip that exact same city apart.
So it's a super chaotic, politically dangerous environment.
Incredibly dangerous. And he wasn't born into aristocratic privilege.
Yeah.
His father, Sophroniscus, was a stonemason.
A working class guy.
Exactly. And his mother, Phaenera, was a midwife, which is a profession that becomes incredibly important as a metaphor later on.
Oh, definitely. We'll get into that.
But he was also notoriously unbothered by his physical appearance. He famously walked barefoot through the Agora, which is the central marketplace.
Just a barefoot guy wandering around talking to people.
Basically, yeah. And perhaps most radically, he fundamentally altered the course of human logic and ethics without ever writing a single word down.
Okay, I have to stop you right there because this is the elephant in the room whenever we do a deep dive on Socrates.
I know exactly what you're gonna say.
If he never wrote anything down, how are we even having a conversation about his philosophy? Are we just reading ancient fan fiction?
It's a very fair question.
Like, how do we know what is actually Socratic wisdom and what is just his student, Plato, using a dead man as a sock puppet to push his own theories?
Yeah, that is the exact friction point that classicists call the Socratic problem.
The Socratic problem.
Right. because we lack primary writings, we have to triangulate the historical Socrates through secondary sources that, quite frankly, severely contradict each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, imagine trying to understand a modern figure based entirely on a glowing biography written by their best friend, a practical summary written by a coworker, and a brutal sketch from a late-night comedian.
Okay, let me guess. Aristophanes is the comedian.
Precisely. Aristophanes was a playwright who wrote a satirical comedy called The Clouds, and in it, he mercilessly mocked Socrates.
Oh,
He portrayed him as this head-in-the-clouds buffoon who runs a thinkery.
a thinkery?
Yeah, a thinkery, where people pay to learn how to make bad arguments sound good. It was essentially ancient character assassination.
Okay, so that's the comedian. What about the coworker?
That would be Xenophon. Xenophon was a military general, and his account of Socrates in the memorabilia gives us a highly practical, disciplined, down-to-earth man.
So not a buffoon at all.
No, Xenophon's Socrates is giving people advice on civic duty, how to manage a household budget, and literally how to physically endure the winter cold.
Very pragmatic. And then Plato's Socrates is, well, I'm guessing not talking about household budgets.
Far from it. Plato presents a deeply metaphysical, transcendent thinker.
The philosopher we all picture.
Right, Plato's Socrates is parsing out the immortality of the soul, the eternal forms, the true nature of abstract justice.
So the historical reality of the man lies somewhere in the messy intersection of all three of these guys.
Exactly. But the inciting incident, like the spark that pushed this stonemason's son to become the famous gadfly of Athens, is something all the sources generally agree upon.
Oh, the Delphi story.
Yes, and it involves a trip to the Oracle of Delphi.
I love this story because it feels like a mythological origin story. So Socrates had this friend, Chaerephon, who the texts describe as highly enthusiastic.
Maybe a bit impulsive, yeah.
Yeah, super impulsive. So Chaerephon travels to the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. And this wasn't just a minor road trip. Delphi was the spiritual center of the ancient Greek world.
It was a massive deal.
So he stands before the Pythia, the prophetess who channels the god Apollo, and he asks this remarkably blunt question. He just says, is anyone wiser than Socrates?
And the oracle's answer is a definitive no one.
No one, just boom.
You really have to put yourself in Socrates' sandals in that moment. According to Plato's Apology, when Chaerephon brings this news back to Athens, Socrates is entirely baffled.
Because he doesn't feel wise at all.
Right. He possesses no grand unifying theory of the cosmos. He doesn't know how to build a ship or write a tragic play. So, treating the oracle's pronouncement as a sort of divine riddle, he sets out to systematically disprove it.
That is so counterintuitive. The oracle says you're the smartest, and your first reaction is, let me prove you wrong.
Well, he decides the best way to honor the god is to find someone wiser than himself and present them as evidence. Like, look, Apollo, this guy is clearly smarter than me.
So he goes on a tour of the Athenian elite. And he starts with the politicians, right? The guys making the laws and running the empire.
Right. And he finds that while the politicians speak beautifully in public about justice, virtue, and governance,
As politicians do.
as they always do, but the moment he begins to question them on the underlying definitions of those concepts, their arguments just collapse.
They don't actually know what they're talking about.
Exactly. They can give examples of justice, but they cannot define what justice actually is.
So he leaves them, probably a bit frustrated, and goes to the poets.
Thinking, surely the artists, the people who write the tragedies and the epics, they must hold the wisdom of the human condition.
And again, he is disappointed.
Deeply disappointed. The poets create deeply moving verses, but Socrates realizes they are operating on divine inspiration.
Like a sort of manic channeling, rather than conscious knowledge.
Yes. When he asks them to explain the profound meaning of their own poetry, they literally can't do it. He concludes that any random bystander could offer a better analysis than the poet who actually wrote it.
So politicians strike out. Poets strike out. Finally, he turns to the craftsmen. The shoemakers, the blacksmiths, the shipbuilders.
And this is where the mechanism of his realization really clicks into place, because unlike the politicians and the poets, the craftsmen actually do know things.
Right, a shipbuilder has tangible, verifiable knowledge of how to bend wood and make it float. If they didn't, the ship would sink.
Exactly. They possessed specific technical skill, but here is the fatal cognitive error that Socrates diagnosed.
Okay, what is it?
Because they were absolute masters of their specific craft, they assumed that mastery bled over into everything else.
Oh, I see.
A master shoemaker falsely believed that his ability to craft leather meant he was also uniquely qualified to dictate statecraft, or define moral virtue, or run the military.
They mistook domain-specific competence for universal wisdom.
Precisely.
And that leads to the famous paradox, right? The realization that shifts the entire paradigm of Western thought. I know that I know nothing.
Yes, though we should be precise here, looking at the linguistic analysis from our academic sources. A much more accurate rendering of the Greek is, I do not suppose myself to know what I do not know.
Oh, that's slightly different.
It is. It isn't a claim of absolute paralyzing zero knowledge. He knows his name. He knows he is a citizen of Athens. He knows how to speak Greek.
Right, he's not an amnesiac.
But regarding the massive universal truth like, what is the good? What is the nature of the soul? He possesses epistemic humility. He draws a firm boundary around his ignorance.
And in that precise boundary, he realizes the oracle was right all along.
Yes. He is wiser than the politician or the craftsman. Because while they are both ignorant of the highest truths, the politician walks around blinded by the illusion that he knows.
While Socrates is awake to his own lack of knowledge.
Exactly.
Let's bring this right into the lap of the listener for a second. Think about the mechanics of your own daily life. We live in a society that demands a performative omniscience.
Well, causa.
You are expected to have a fully formed, aggressively defended opinion on a complex geopolitical conflict, macroeconomic inflation, and public health policy, all before you even finish your morning coffee.
It's absurd when you really lay it out like that.
It is. And the cognitive load of maintaining that facade is staggering.
Yeah.
But if you adopt Socratic ignorance, if you look at a complex issue and simply say out loud, I don't know enough about this to have an opinion, the relief is immediate.
It really is a radical form of intellectual surrender.
The anxiety of having to be the expert just evaporates.
It is a profound unburdening, a deep exhale for the mind. But, and this is a critical transition to make, embracing this ignorance is not an invitation to apathy.
It's not an excuse to just tune out.
No, it doesn't mean you sit back and say, well, since I don't know the ultimate truth, I'll just scroll social media all day. Socratic ignorance is the starting line, not the finish line.
Because clearing the false knowledge out of the way creates the necessary space for the work.
Right. The most important work a human being can do. And that leads us to his most uncompromising maxim.
The heavy hitter. This is the quote everyone knows. It's found in Plato's Apology, section 38a. And the context is vital here because Socrates isn't just chatting in a cafe. He is standing trial.
Facing the death penalty.
Right. He is addressing the jury of Athenians who hold his life in their hands, and he states, without a hint of compromise, the unexamined life is not worth living.
The linguistic dive our sources take into the original Greek of this phrase is fascinating.
Let's hear it.
So the text is ho de enexetastas bios ou biotos anthropoi.
Okay, and what does that specifically translate to?
The literal, precise translation is, the unexamined life is not worth living for a human being.
For a human being. That modifier changes the entire texture of the philosophy.
It creates a stark, qualitative distinction between mere biological existence and a life of human dignity. Socrates is arguing that a life devoid of exegesis, which is the active process of critical examination, is functionally vegetative.
Or animalistic.
Yes. Think about it. A dog lives, eats, seeks comfort, reproduces, and operates on instinct. If a human being does only those exact same things, waking up, seeking a paycheck to buy food, seeking physical comfort, and going back to sleep.
Without ever stepping back to examine why they do these things.
Exactly. They are surrendering the one unique faculty that separates them from the animal kingdom, which is rational inquiry. To live without examination is to abdicate your humanity.
I want to use an analogy here to ground this because the way the Athenians lived really isn't so different from us today.
Not at all.
In ancient Athens, the unexamined life looked like chasing wealth, chasing political clout in the assembly, worrying about your reputation. Today, it looks like chasing follower counts, title promotions, or buying the car your neighbors will envy.
It's the exact same human trap, just with different set dressing.
Right, so living an unexamined life is like running endlessly on a treadmill in a pitch-black room. You are sweating, your heart rate is up, you are expanding massive amounts of energy, hitting the metrics the machine demands.
But because it's dark, you have never once stepped off the belt, turned on the lights, and asked, where is this machine actually taking me? Why am I running?
That is exactly the mechanism of an unexamined life. It is the expenditure of life force without directional purpose. You are surviving biologically and perhaps succeeding socially, but you are failing philosophically.
It's such a striking image.
But I need to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who has ever suffered from anxiety.
Go for it.
If I spend my whole life examining everything, isn't that just a recipe for paralysis? If I question every career choice, every conversation I have, every motivation, I am going to be exhausted. Doesn't sound like a mental spa day. That sounds like a clinical anxiety loop.
That is a very natural fear, and it requires us to draw a sharp line between modern neurotic rumination and true Socratic examination.
Okay, what's the difference?
What you are describing, the endless, paralyzing looping over past mistakes or future fears, is rumination. Rumination is circular, it traps you.
Right, it goes nowhere.
Socratic examination is fundamentally different because it is directional and structural. It is not like staring at a chaotic closet and feeling overwhelmed by the mess. It is more like debugging a piece of computer code.
Oh, I like that. Debugging code. Walk me through that.
When a software program crashes, a programmer doesn't just sit there and worry about the crash. They systematically go through the lines of code to find the exact logical error, the broken dependency that caused the failure.
They look for the specific bug.
Yes. And once they find it, they rewrite that specific line, and the program runs smoothly. Socratic examination is debugging the software of your mind.
That makes so much sense.
It is systematically isolating your beliefs, say, the belief that I must be wealthy to be respected, and testing the logic of that code. When you find the error, you discard it.
The result isn't exhaustion. It is profound lightness. You are literally uninstalling malware from your brain.
Uninstalling malware, exactly.
Okay, that clarifies the why, but we really need to look at the how. Because Socrates didn't just tell people to go sit on a mountain and think really hard.
No, he was extremely active.
He actively approached people in the street and engaged them in a very specific and sometimes incredibly annoying process.
Yes, and he had a brilliant metaphor for his process. In Plato's dialogue, the Theaetetus, Socrates brings up his mother's profession. He says that he, too, is a midwife.
But not for babies.
Right. He is a midwife for the soul. He calls it the Socratic Method. He claims a radical poverty of ideas. He says his own mind is entirely barren. He cannot teach anyone anything directly.
Which feels like false modesty, but okay.
Well, he insists on it. But he is highly skilled at helping others give birth to the thoughts gestating inside them.
Which completely inverts the modern paradigm of education. We think of a teacher or a guru as a full vessel that just pours facts into an empty student.
I like filling up a cup.
Yeah. But Socrates says, no, you already possess the wisdom. My only job is to ask the right questions to help you push it out.
Exactly. And the second part of his job as a midwife is testing the newborn idea to see if it is a viable living truth or if it is stillborn, which in this case means a logical contradiction.
So how does he test it?
The tool he uses to test these ideas is called the Socratic Elenchus, which translates roughly to cross-examination or refutation.
Let's actually break down the mechanics of the Elenchus. Our sources identify a 5-step process. Receive, reflect, refine, restate, restart.
Very clear loop.
But instead of just listing them, let's put them into action. Let's role play this.
Okay, I'm game.
Say I am a modern Athenian, and I come to you with a deeply unexamined anxiety. My core belief, my code is, if I don't get this promotion at work, I am a failure as a person. Apply the Elenchus to me.
Gladly. So the first step is receive. I listen to your premise without immediate judgment. Without this promotion, you are a failure.
Okay.
The second step is reflect. I want to ensure we are defining our terms. I would say, so to be clear, your human value is entirely dependent on the corporate hierarchy of your specific company.
I'd probably say, well, when you put it like that, it sounds extreme, but yes, my success is entirely tied to my career.
Now we enter the third step, refine, which is where the Socratic probing begins. I look for logical dependencies. I might ask, do you know people who have received promotions but are miserable, unethical, or what you would consider failures in life?
Yes, definitely. My old boss got promoted twice, and his family life completely fell apart, and everyone hated him.
And do you know people who have never climbed a corporate ladder, perhaps an artist or a dedicated parent whom you respect deeply?
Of course. My grandfather was a carpenter his whole life, never got promoted, and he was the greatest man I ever knew.
So now we hit the contradiction. If a promoted person can be a failure and an unpromoted person can be great, then the promotion itself cannot be the mechanism that dictates human value. Your initial code is broken.
Wow. And this brings us to the result of the Elenchus, the state the Greeks called aporia.
Aporia, a state of profound absolute puzzlement.
A literal lack of passage, right?
Yes.
My code has crashed. I thought I knew what success was, and in 3 questions, I realized I have absolutely no idea.
And that feeling of breakdown is exactly what Socrates was aiming for.
Really? He wanted people to feel lost.
Temporarily, yes. Because only when the false architecture of your belief collapses can you move to step 4, restate, and build something structurally sound.
So I might restate. Okay, success isn't the promotion. Success is living with integrity regardless of my job title.
And then step 5 is restart, where you continually test that new belief.
The parallels here to modern psychology are staggering. Because what we just did, that gentle, logical dismantling of a false belief, is literally the foundational pillar of cognitive behavioral therapy.
The intersection is undeniable. In CBT, when a patient presents with a cognitive distortion like, everyone at this party thinks I'm boring, a good therapist doesn't just tell them they are wrong.
Right, they don't just say, no, you're super fun.
Exactly. They use Socratic questioning as guided discovery. What evidence do you have that they think you are boring? Is it possible they are just tired? If your friend was quiet at a party, would you automatically assume they were boring?
By applying this to ourselves, we gain an incredibly therapeutic tool. When you are spiraling in your own head, you can become your own midwife.
I love that framing.
You pause the anxiety, you interrogate the thought. Upon what assumption is this fear resting? Is that assumption universally true? You just gently pick at the knot until it comes undone.
It's incredibly empowering.
But this method of breaking down false assumptions led Socrates to a conclusion about human behavior. That is, it's incredibly hard to swallow.
You are referring to Socratic psychological intellectualism, the absolute core paradox of his ethics.
Yeah, and the Reddit thread on Stoicism provided a brilliant, succinct summary of this. It said, there's only one good, knowledge, and one evil, ignorance.
Which sounds like a nice bumper sticker until you realize the absolute extremes he takes it to.
Right, because Socrates believed that virtue arto is literally identical to knowledge epistemo or practical wisdom, phronesis.
They aren't just related, they're the exact same thing.
And the unavoidable logical consequence of equating virtue and knowledge is his most controversial claim. Udes heiken hamartani. No one does wrong knowingly or willingly.
No one.
Okay, I'm going to push back on this and everything I have, because human experience screams that this is false.
It definitely feels false.
We all know right from wrong, and we deliberately do the wrong thing all the time. I know, logically, that scrolling social media until 2 a.m. destroys my sleep and ruins my next day. I know it, and yet, tonight, I will probably do it.
Yeah.
Or, to use a heavier example, an addict knows that the substance is destroying their liver, their finances, their family. They weep over the knowledge of it, yet they still pick up the bottle. The Greeks called this akrasia, weakness of will. How can Socrates possibly deny that akrasia exists?
He denies it completely and fundamentally. It is the most radical element of his psychology.
But how? It's so obvious.
To understand how he can deny akrasia, we have to understand the Socratic mechanism of motivation. Socrates argues that every human being, in every single action, naturally and inescapably aims for their perceived good.
Their perceived good.
Yes. We are biologically and psychologically wired to choose what we believe will benefit us. Therefore, you cannot consciously desire evil or harm for yourself as an end in itself.
But the addict is choosing harm.
Socrates would say the addict is choosing what they falsely perceive as a good in that microscopic moment.
Wait, explain that.
It is a failure of measurement, a collapse of the internal calculus. In the exact millisecond the addict reaches for the bottle, the overwhelming, immediate, visceral relief of the withdrawal symptoms, the dopamine hit, is weighed on the internal scale as a greater good than the abstract, distant concept of long-term health.
Oh, wow.
Their knowledge didn't just get ignored, it was temporarily eclipsed by a powerful false belief about what would make them happy right now.
So you are saying that in the moment of action, the intellectual knowledge of this is bad for me actually vanishes, replaced by a momentary, ignorant belief that this will make me feel better.
Exactly. Vice is never a desire for evil. Vice is a cognitive error. It is moral astigmatism.
Moral astigmatism.
Yeah. You are looking at a short-term pleasure and misjudging its size because it is close to your face, while true virtue seems small because it is far away.
If we really accept that, if we genuinely adopt that framework, the amount of empathy it generates is overwhelming.
It changes everything.
It means the person who cuts you off in traffic, the coworker who sabotages your project, the family member who snaps at you, they aren't inherently evil demons who wake up desiring to cause pain.
Not at all.
They are just operating under a deeply flawed, ignorant calculus of their own self-interest. They are literally making a math error.
Yes.
And when we fail, when we eat the whole cake or yell at our kids, we aren't fundamentally broken. We just lack the proper knowledge in that moment. It removes the heavy burden of shame and replaces it with a need for education.
It replaces moral condemnation with a call for structural repair.
That is so freeing.
It is, but that raises the ultimate question. If virtue is simply knowledge, how do we teach it?
Right, if no one actually knows what perfect justice or virtue is, how can we acquire it?
This is the central problem of Plato's dialogue, the Meno.
And the Meno features one of the most famous scenes in all of philosophy because Socrates decides to prove how we learn, not by arguing, but by doing an experiment.
A live demonstration.
Yes. He calls over a young enslaved boy who serves in the household. This boy has absolutely zero formal education. He has never been taught mathematics or geometry.
Nothing.
So Socrates draws a square in the dirt. He establishes that the square is 2 feet by 2 feet. He asks the boy the area. The boy correctly says 4 square feet.
Simple enough.
Then Socrates poses the problem. I want a square with exactly double the area, an area of 8 square feet. How long must the sides be?
And the boy does what any uneducated person, including myself, probably would do intuitively.
Right, he thinks, if I want double the area, I must double the sides. So he guesses the sides should be 4 feet long.
But Socrates doesn't tell him he is wrong. He doesn't say, no, idiot, that's wrong.
No, he uses the elenchus. He says, let's test that. He draws a square with 4-foot sides and asks the boy to calculate the area. 4 times 4 is 16.
Way too big.
The boy immediately realizes his error. He is an aporia. He knows the answer isn't 2 and he knows it isn't 4.
Regret.
Tries 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Still wrong. The boy is completely stuck.
And here's the magic of the scene. Socrates never gives him the answer.
Never.
He simply draws diagonal lines across the original squares, cutting them in half, and asks the boy questions about those lines. Does this line cut the space in half? Yes.
And through a series of yes or no questions about the geometry in the dirt, the boy organically deduces the Pythagorean theorem.
It's incredible.
He realizes the square built on the diagonal of the original square gives the exact area of 8.
The boy arrives at a complex mathematical truth completely on his own. The mechanism of Socratic questioning didn't implant the knowledge, it merely uncovered it.
He was already there.
Socrates uses this as proof for the theory of recollection. He argues that the human soul already possesses the knowledge of ultimate truths like mathematics, and by extension, justice and virtue.
True learning isn't acquiring new information from the outside world. It is recollecting what is already deeply embedded within you.
Which is such a paradigm shift.
For a modern listener overwhelmed by the pressure to read another self-help book, download another podcast, or hire another life coach to find the secret to a good life, this is the ultimate soothing takeaway.
You don't need any of that.
The wisdom you need to live peacefully is already installed in your hardware. You don't need to buy it. You just need to sit quietly and ask yourself the right questions to access it.
And because this internal mental landscape was so rich and all-consuming for Socrates, it naturally pushed him away from external dependencies.
Oh, right, because if everything is internal, the external world doesn't matter as much.
Exactly. The physical world, the opinions of others, material wealth, these became not just irrelevant, but actual obstacles to the care of the soul.
Which brings us back to the practical observations of Xenophon.
Yes, let's paint a picture of the ascetic Socrates. If Socrates were alive today, he would be the absolute antithesis of the influencer lifestyle.
Total opposite.
Xenophon describes a man who wore the exact same threadbare cloak in the blistering Athenian summer and the freezing winter. He walked barefoot everywhere. And crucially, he refused to monetize his wisdom.
That was a huge deal in Athens, wasn't it?
Massive, because there's a group called the Sophists. They were essentially highly paid, ancient corporate consultants who taught rhetoric and persuasion to the sons of the wealthy.
Basically teaching them how to win arguments, regardless of the truth.
Right. Socrates despised them, and he never charged a single drachma for his conversations.
His lifestyle was so extreme that it invited open mockery. A prominent sophist named Antiphon confronted Socrates and said, "You live a life that would drive a slave to run away from his master. Your food is terrible, your clothes are rags. If philosophy makes you this miserable, you are a teacher of misery."
Antiphon equated poverty directly with suffering.
And Socrates' response is one of the greatest mic drops in ancient history.
Oh, it's brilliant.
He looks at Antiphon and says, "To have no wants is divine. To have as few as possible comes next to the divine."
This introduces the concept of autarkia, which translates to self-sufficiency. But we really need to understand the mechanism of Socratic autarkia because it is vastly different from how we define self-sufficiency today.
Right. Today, we think self-sufficiency means having a massive bank account, a bunker stocked with food, and off-grid solar panels.
The prepper mindset.
Yeah. We think freedom is having the resources to satisfy every single desire the moment it arises. It's the billionaire's version of freedom.
Exactly. But Socrates argues that if you have 1,000 desires and the money to fulfill them all, you are still a slave.
A slave to the desires themselves.
Yes, you are a slave to the desires and a slave to the anxiety of maintaining the wealth required to feed them. True Socratic freedom autarkia is achieved by entirely removing the desire itself.
So if you train yourself not to desire a soft bed, you cannot be made miserable by sleeping on the ground.
Right. If you do not crave the validation of the crowd, you cannot be manipulated by politicians or advertisers who promise to give it to you.
It is the ultimate spiritual armor. You make yourself completely invulnerable to the chaos of the world by systematically dropping your dependencies. You find profound tranquility not by acquiring more, but by needing less.
It's minimalism on a spiritual level.
But this unwavering commitment, this absolute refusal to play the games of Athenian society, his constant exposure of the ignorance of powerful men, it made him a massive liability to the state.
Oh, they hated him for it.
He called himself a gadfly, stinging the lazy noble horse of Athens to wake it up. But eventually, the horse got tired of being stung. And this leads us to the final, ultimate test of his philosophy, his trial and execution.
So in 399 BCE, at the age of 70, Socrates is formally indicted. The charges are twofold: corrupting the youth of Athens and impiety.
Impiety meaning what exactly?
Specifically, failing to acknowledge the gods that the city acknowledges and introducing new deities. He is tried before a jury of 500 male citizens. The vote is relatively close, but he is found guilty.
Now, under the Athenian legal system, once you were found guilty, the prosecution proposed a penalty and the defense proposed a counter penalty, and the jury chose between them.
Right, it was a negotiation.
The prosecution proposed death. All Socrates had to do was propose a reasonable alternative. He could have proposed exile. The jury almost certainly would have accepted that just to get him out of their hair.
Easily.
He could have paid a massive fine, which his wealthy friends, including Plato, offered to fund.
They were begging him to let them pay it.
But to do any of those things would require him to admit that he had done something wrong, which his examined conscience knew was false.
It would require him to compromise his internal code to preserve his biological life.
And as we established with the unexamined life maxim, mere biological survival is worthless to him if the soul is corrupted.
Exactly. So instead of begging for his life, he trolls the jury.
He literally trolls them.
He suggests that because he has provided the greatest possible service to the city by waking them up to their ignorance, his punishment should be free meals for the rest of his life in the Prytaneum.
Which is an honor exclusively reserved for Olympic champions and war heroes.
It is an astonishing act of defiance. It infuriates the jury. They vote overwhelmingly for the death penalty. More people voted to kill him than voted him guilty in the first place.
That really shows how mad they were.
He is sentenced to die by drinking a cup of hemlock. And his reaction to the sentence is the final, undeniable proof of his philosophy.
He doesn't weep. He doesn't panic.
He argues that to fear death is simply another form of false wisdom. It is claiming to know that death is a terrible evil when in fact no living person knows what it is.
I do not suppose myself to know what I do not know. He applies epistemic minimalism to mortality itself.
Which is the hardest thing to apply it to.
It might be a dreamless, peaceful sleep. Or it might be a migration of the soul to an underworld where he can spend eternity cross-examining Homer and Odysseus. Either way, there's nothing to fear.
This brings us to his final moments, beautifully and tragically detailed by Plato in the Phaedo, section 118a.
Setting the scene.
Socrates is in his prison cell, surrounded by his friends who are weeping uncontrollably. He is entirely calm. He takes the cup of hemlock and drinks it.
And the poison works slowly.
Very slowly. It numbs the body from the extremities inward. He walks around until his legs grow heavy, then lies down. The coldness creeps up his legs, past his waist, moving inexorably toward his heart.
But before it reaches his heart, he uncovers his face one last time to speak to his oldest friend, Crito.
And these final words have echoed through history. He says, "Crito, we owe a cock to Asclepius. All of you must pay what is owed and not be careless."
This single sentence has generated over 2 millennia of intense scholarly debate.
Because on the surface, it makes no sense. Asclepius is the ancient Greek god of medicine and healing.
Right. In their religious tradition, if you fall deathly ill, you pray to Asclepius. When you recover, you offer a rooster a cock as a sacrifice of gratitude to the god for curing you.
And Socrates is lying on a stone floor, his organs shutting down from a state-administered neurotoxin. He is minutes away from death. Why is he thanking the god of healing? What is the disease?
The academic sources debate 3 primary interpretations of this mystery. The first is what we can call the Nietzschean view.
The 19th century philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche looked at this and was somewhat disgusted. He concluded that Socrates viewed earthly, physical life itself as a prolonged, feverish sickness.
The physical body is a prison for the rational soul.
Right, distracting it with hunger, pain, and irrational passions. Therefore, death is the ultimate cure. It liberates the soul from the disease of biology. He is thanking Asclepius because the hemlock is the medicine that is finally curing him of life.
I mean, I understand the logic, but that feels deeply pessimistic. It turns our mental spa day into a bit of a funeral dirge. Viewing life merely as a disease to be escaped just doesn't seem to align with the man who spent 70 years joyfully debating in the marketplace.
I agree. So what is the second interpretation?
The second is the civic view. Asclepius was a relatively new cult in Athens at the time, and it was a cult centered entirely around compassion, healing, and public health.
In stark contrast to the traditional warlike gods.
Exactly. The gods in whose name Socrates was being executed. Some scholars argue that Socrates, who loved his city despite its deep flaws, was offering a final pious prayer for the spiritual healing of Athens.
He is asking his friends to pray that the city recovers from the sickness of ignorance and corruption that led it to execute an innocent man.
I really love that. It frames his last breath as an act of profound forgiveness toward the society that is killing him.
It's beautiful, but there is a third reading, isn't there? One that focuses on the very last clause of his sentence.
Yes, the ultimate command. The Greek phrase he uses is maiemelesit, which translates roughly to do not be careless or do not neglect it.
Many philosophers interpret this not as a literal instruction to buy a bird, but as his final, most urgent command to humanity.
Throughout his life, his message was that the only true disease is ignorance, and the only true health is virtue.
His last words are a reminder. Do not neglect the care of your soul. Do not be careless with your inner life.
Yeah. Let's take a deep breath and look at the vast architecture of the journey we've just taken. We start by acknowledging the heavy, exhausting weight of modern information accumulation.
And through Socrates, we found the immense relief of epistemic minimalism, the superpower of looking at the noise and saying, I don't know.
We saw how the unexamined life is a treadmill in the dark, and how the Socratic Elenchus acts as a debugging tool, a therapeutic method to dismantle our own anxieties and false beliefs, just like modern CBT.
We wrestled with his psychological intellectualism, the radical, forgiving idea that vice is just a cognitive error, a miscalculation of the good.
Which allows us to replace our anger at the world with empathy.
We explored autarkia, the realization that invulnerability comes not from having everything, but from needing nothing.
There finally, we witnessed a man whose commitment to the examined life was so absolute that he drank poison with the calm of a man taking a cure.
It is essential to remember as you transition back into your daily routine that Socratic philosophy is not a mandate for rigid self-punishment or neurotic overthinking.
It is precisely the opposite. It is about the deep, relaxing peace that settles over you when you finally drop the heavy armor of pretending to know everything.
Yes. Shed the societal expectations that don't serve you, and begin to quietly nurture the wisdom that is already inside you.
It is about turning off the treadmill and turning on the light.
And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought, a structural question to mull over in the quiet moments of your day.
We'd love to hear this.
If Socratic wisdom begins with acknowledging our ignorance and our anxieties stem from unexamined code, what firmly held, unquestioned belief of yours might be the very thing making your soul sick today. What specific piece of mental architecture is weighing you down? And what would happen if you finally paused, became a midwife to your own mind, and dared to ask it? Why?
You do not have to accumulate the answer today. Just let the question sit. Thank you for taking this time for yourself and for exploring with us. Have a wonderful, peaceful day.